it doesn't matter. It's not going to be around by the time I get there. It's a common phrase I hear whenever we talk about Social Security with some of our clients. And the truth is, really no one's going to know what the future of Social Security holds. This video is going to be on a different topic, and that's how not to mess up Social Security once you get into retirement. So I do have a completely different video on that other topic, but today I want to give you a simple breakdown of what Social Security is, how your payment is decided by the government, and ways that you can go about maximizing that payment in retirement. So if you're someone who has not started Social Security yet, this is a great video for you. So let's simply start with a background of what Social Security is. I think this is important to start here because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings of this program simply because of not understanding how it originated. So Social Security started back during the Great Depression in 1935 to be exact, and its purpose was to provide income in retirement, not full expenses, just a foundation, almost a safety net is how you can think of this. The government just didn't want people going broke the same way that they had seen them standing in line for food or standing in line for a job during the Great Depression. Since 1935, when it originated, it has now expanded to cover survivors, dependents, covers a wide array of those beyond just the employed now. So that gets me into my fear among retirees or those who are 5, 10, 15 years out from their retirement that it's not going to be around by the time they get there. Started in 1935, there's no way this thing makes it until 2035, or insert your retirement date here. But before we get into what you get out of the system, let's simply break down how you actually make contributions to Social Security. And I kind of use that word half-heartedly, contributions, because really it's a tax. So present day in 2025, 6.2% of every single paycheck that you receive from your employer goes to the Social Security Trust Fund, the fund that Social Security uses to pay those currently in the program. Your employer is also going to turn around and match that 6.2% because they also have to make that same tax, that same contribution into the trust fund. So yes, those who are self-employed have to pay 12.4% of their net self-income. They are able to take a deduction on the employer portion, but yes, if you are self-employed, you do end up covering both of those. So this 6.2% tax on your paycheck does continue up to what's known as a wage base limit. That's going to be the maximum the maximum income that the government is still going to be collecting those Social Security payments from you on. So for the purposes of 2025, that's right now about $176,000. So once you make that amount in income, you no longer have to pay towards Social Security after you hit that. And this is just based on an individual level. If you make $180,000, you have surpassed that $176,000. Unfortunately, your spouse, who may be making below that $176,000, still is going to owe on Social Security. So they don't look at it from a combined basis here. And to be kind of the bearer of bad news here, this is not even including Medicare. Medicare is a completely different tax on your paycheck. And the worst part is this does not have that wage base maximum. Medicare not only continues past $176,000 for the current year, but it even adds a surtax. It gets higher once you make more. So Medicare is not one of the favorites of high earning individuals, but it is important to know both how you're taxed and the things that you can do about it. So now let's talk about what you get out of the system, right? I've talked about what Social Security is. I've talked about how you are paying into it. So now let's talk about what you can get out of it. Well, here's a simple breakdown of how Social Security works. And Social Security's ultimate goal is to provide you with a guaranteed monthly income for life. It's based off of your 35 highest earning years, and then it goes through a formula, which ultimately is going to produce your primary insurance amount, or your PIA. So all you really need to know from that is they take the most amount of money that you've made for 35 years. If you did not work 35 years, they just count that year as a zero. So it's just going to lower whatever benefit that you have. Ultimately, it's going to be up to you, or you with a financial advisor or someone that you trust, to decide when to start Social Security. Because this is one of the biggest questions that we have from clients, which is, when do I start Social Security? Now, while it may seem the obvious answer to start as soon as possible, if the government is offering to pay me money on a monthly basis, why would I wait? But the truth is, it really depends. There's no black and white answer, unfortunately, with this answer, because if you wait longer, the government's going to pay you more, versus if you take it as soon as you turn the age of 62, they're actually going to pay you less than what you earned throughout your working career. And really what I'm talking about there is what's known as your full retirement age. And for reference here, those of you born in the year 1960 or later, your full retirement age is currently 67 years old. So what I want you to view 67 as is sort of your landmark age when you will receive the full benefit that you've earned for those 35 years of working that we just talked about a moment ago with that visual. Like I said, if you start it at age 62, you're going to see a reduction based off of how early you started, because obviously you can take it at 62, 63, 64, and it's going to decrease depending on how early you started it. Now, if you wait to take it, if you wait past your full retirement age, let's say you wait until you're 70 years old, you have now increased your monthly payment by 8% per year that you waited. So if we say we take it at 70, now we've earned an extra 24% on our paycheck. And that also sounds like it's obvious, right? You should wait until you turn 70 because that's when the most amount of money is going to come into your mailbox. Well, again, it's not black and white here, because here are some of the main things that I want you to consider when you're thinking about when to start your Social Security. So the first is, do you actually need the money? And if you don't, odds are you may not need to start it right now, because not only are you taking a reduced benefit for starting it early, you're also eliminating some tax planning potential options that you could have. And I'll talk to that here in a moment, but it's based around Roth conversions and how that impacts your income. The second component is, do you have a spouse to consider? So let me quickly give you the rules for how this works whenever you have a spouse. So let's say that you had a spouse. We'll give you two different scenarios here. Let's say that you had a spouse that did not work throughout your working career and they stayed at home, they took care of the kids. Meanwhile, there's another scenario in which your spouse worked the same amount of time that you did, and regardless of if they made more or less, it'll work for the scenario. But let's focus on that first scenario here. So your spouse was a stay-at-home mom and she was able to take care of the kids for, 15 years, and then she stayed at home and took care of the house after that. Well, in this scenario, your spouse is entitled to take half of whatever your Social Security payment is. But that is all going to depend on when you start your Social Security. Remember, your spouse cannot take half of your Social Security until you start it. So you are the originator here. So until you turn that faucet on, so to speak, your spouse isn't able to turn this on. Now let's go to the scenario 2 here. If your spouse did work, if your wife was working, what she can do is just say, I don't need your benefit, I'll just take mine. It's going to be significantly more than taking half of yours. But let's say that your Social Security payment on a monthly basis is still higher than hers. Let's say that you predecease her, as most men do, predecease their wives just by data. Now she can actually take the higher benefit, which is in this case yours. So let's say that your payment just happened to be $3,000 a month, your wife's happened to be $2,000 a month. Let's say that you die before her, she can now move from that $2,000 a month to taking $3,000 a month. So that's a very minor detail, but it's important to consider whenever you're thinking about who it impacts other than yourself. Third one here, and I'll speed these up, I promise. Third one here is longevity expectations. If you're someone that's not planning on living into your 80s and into your 90s, well, maybe there's more of an argument for taking it at 62, and the same can go if you're planning on living into your 90s and into your hundreds. But either way, having a fear of longevity can make an argument for 62 or for 70, because you have to remember there's not a great amount of inflation increase that comes with your Social Security payment. So they will increase by whatever CPI is decided on, Consumer Price Index per year with the government. But really, once you start your payments, there's really not too much that you can do here. It's not invested like a stock market investment for comparison. So once you turn that faucet on, it is difficult to turn it off, and it's difficult to change that amount, of course. So something you want to consider is longevity risk. Fourth is planning around Roth conversions. So simply put here, once you retire, there can be a potential benefit for some of you doing what's known as a Roth conversion. That's taking money that has not been taxed yet, such as in your 401k or in your traditional IRA, making it your income for the year, being taxed as income for the year, and moving it over to your Roth IRA. Now, what you've done, I have a whole nother video on this, but what you've done is you've potentially lowered your overall amount of taxes you're going to have to pay over your lifetime, and you're going to be able to pass that account on to heirs tax-free. So it can potentially be a great benefit to you. That said, if you are someone that's planning on taking Roth conversions early on in retirement, well, that's just an obvious answer of you probably want to wait until your full retirement age or even after, because you want to give yourself plenty of time to add to your income for the year. You don't want to be starting it at the same time as Social Security, because if I throw a visual up on screen here, let's say I was planning on making $60,000 in addition to my spouse from Social Security, and I'm planning on taking a Roth conversion of $40,000, well, all of a sudden I'm already up into a new tax bracket just from that alone. So you'll want to consider if you're someone planning on taking Roth conversions. So the last thing I'll show you here is just this simple visual. And this is very important, and I want to point to an important number in here, and it's just called your break-even age. It's essentially assuming you don't take it at 62, how long do you have to live in order for this to be worth it, right? Everyone wants to know, when is it worth it to wait? And for some of you, when you see that number, let's say it's 78, let's say it's 75, you're going to know whether or not that sounds like something you can make it to. Now, God is the decider of our fate, but we do need to keep that in mind, that you do need to live past a certain point for it to be logically worth it. And I know financial planning is much more than X's and O's. It's much more than quantitative. There's a lot of factors that play into this, and I think that's kind of what I've been stressing this whole video. There's no black and white answer. It's really going to come down to what does your family need, what do you need, and what do you see for your future. So run your own numbers, get advice if you need it. I'm here if you have any questions, but thank you guys, as always, for tuning into this video about Social Security, and see you next time.